Because a man from your past discovered that your particular someone no longer wants to live. The instant your loved someone got the message on their phone, something seemed oddly incomplete. A name from your past flashed on the screen as they sat close to a window, not seeing the nighttime traffic blazing beyond the glass. They had heard of a man, but they never anticipated hearing from him. His statement was brief and almost too composed. You should know something about them. Your special someone gazed at those words, unsure of how to react. They nearly dropped the phone. Nearly. Curiosity prevailed, though. They were emotionally overwhelmed by what transpired, doubting everything they believed to be true about you and finding it difficult to envision their own future in the same manner. The first item this man disclosed wasn't even the true secret, so stay tight. It was only the entryway. He started recounting incidents from your past in a way that sounded plausible. Discussions, choices, and situations that your special someone was unaware of. However, there was something wrong with his rendition. Some things sounded refined, as if he had practiced them. Others appeared purposefully lacking. This was also recognized by your loved someone, but emotion was taking precedence over reason. Another message came in, and their fingers clenched around the phone. You still have no idea who they truly are. Your special someone was silent for a few minutes. The silence in the room seemed out of the ordinary. They made their way to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and set it aside on the counter. They were troubled by more than just what this man said. That was the reason he had abruptly decided to show up at this time. Why right now? Why don't you get in touch with them? And why did each message seem to be intended to cast doubt on something they had previously believed to be true? His story began with that inquiry. This time, your special someone read everything more slowly and scrolled upward. There was one particularly noteworthy sentence. You were someone who could never really commit to anyone, according to the man. However, your special someone was able to recall the little details that no one else could have. When conversations got tough, you were patient. You were able to recall facts that others had forgotten. And the times you decided to comprehend rather than just turn away. Their experience and his description were starting to diverge. Then there was another alert. He referred to this one as proof. And the look of your particular someone dramatically changed for a little moment. However, the proof presented an issue that the man obviously hadn't anticipated. It had a date on it, and because of something you had stated in passing, your special someone knew exactly where you had been at that time. All of a sudden, the narrative was becoming less clear. It was falling apart. Your loved someone began asking specific questions as they leaned closer to the TV. The man's responses grew slower at first, then shorter. One question received no response at all. Beneath all the dramatic accusations, another option was beginning to emerge, which is why that stillness was important. Perhaps the startling reality wasn't that you had tricked your particular someone. It's possible that someone from your past has been bringing an outdated version of you into the present, refusing to acknowledge that people change, situations change, and stories can take on entirely different forms when one person is in charge of presenting them. There was still one mystery, though. Why was this man so intent on persuading your beloved someone to avoid you? Minutes later, the solution was concealed in a sentence he most likely never meant to share. It was read twice by your particular someone. At last, they realized that this was more than just your history. This man contacted them for a private reason. And everything he had said about you became to signify something completely different once that reason became apparent. 6 common words concealed the clue. You were meant to make a different decision. That sentence caused your special someone to freeze because the discourse no longer seemed like a warning from someone attempting to shield them. It sounded intimate. After setting the phone down on the table and taking a brief break, they came back and read the whole conversation from start to finish. They weren't reading with emotion this time. They were researching it. Every thoughtful doubt. Every incomplete charge, every attempt to characterize you as if you could only ever be the person you once were. Then one inquiry was typed by your particular someone. Why is my friendship with them so important to you? The typing indicator showed up right away. Vanished, reappeared. Nothing after that. 30 seconds went by. 1 whole minute. When the man finally spoke, he attempted to shift the topic rather than provide a response. That's when your particular someone realized there was more to you than meets the eye. Keep an eye on this, since what they discovered next drastically altered who seemed reliable during this exchange. This time, your particular someone inquired in a new way. After telling me all of this, what specifically did you anticipate happening? There was another extended pause. Outside, cars passed the window, their headlights moving across the wall. However, your beloved someone seldom paid attention. Then came the response. I had hoped you would view them the way I do at last. There it was, neither proof nor worry. Viewpoint. The dude wasn't just giving away details. He wanted his opinion of you to be passed down to your particular someone. And surprising clarity resulted from that knowledge. Your particular someone realized that it is possible to deliver theoretically correct parts of a story while omitting the details that give those parts context. It is possible to characterize a quarrel without bringing up the subsequent apology. It is possible to repeat a tough choice without providing an explanation for the circumstances. It is possible to portray an old error as a permanent identity while disregarding subsequent years of development. At first, your particular someone was so overwhelmed that it was hard to imagine the future, but now that sensation was giving way to something more stable. The desire to hear the other side before drawing any conclusions. You are welcome to share this story if it makes you think of someone who should hear it. The following communication included the information the man had been deliberately avoiding, so please share your ideas in the comments and subscribe for more stories like this. Your special someone noted that his responses become oddly ambiguous whenever they inquired about a specific year in your history. As a result, they probed what had transpired between the two of you rather than what you had allegedly done. It took over 5 minutes to respond. Everything changed when it did show up. We used to be tight. Then they decided to live a different life. Slowly, your special someone relaxed. The emotional impact of all the earlier messages was explained by that one admission. This man did not stand outside of your past as an unbiased messenger. He took part in it. He anticipated who you would grow up to be, where your life would take you, and maybe even whether he would continue to play a significant role in it. He had used his own disappointment to interpret the change in your route. That did not immediately render all of his memories untrue. However, this meant that his view could no longer be regarded as the complete truth. After re-examining the purported documentation and his prior claims, your particular someone detected something different. He had never once inquired about your current treatment of them. He had never inquired as to whether you had changed. He had never expressed interest in the person you had grown into. Then, as your particular someone was about to stop the call, he sent you one more message. All right. Find out what transpired that evening and why they never revealed their true identities to you. Your particular someone gazed at the screen. Because he had unintentionally given them the precise question that could reveal the truth this time, rather than another allegation. A picture that your special someone had never seen was the first step in the solution. It's not a striking picture. Just an old photo hidden inside a message you eventually agreed to share after they questioned you about that evening, nothing overtly suspicious. The man from your past was standing next to you as three individuals grinned at the camera under the bright lighting of an almost empty restaurant. As you described what the picture could never convey, your special someone examined every detail. Rather than the start of some secret, that night had signaled the conclusion of a chapter. Plans, friendships, and expectations about where life would lead you had previously brought you and that man close. However, something altered. You became aware that you were evolving into a version of yourself focused on making other people feel at ease. You eventually told him that evening that you were going in a different direction, no dramatic betrayal, no enigmatic secret life. You just quit letting the expectations of others dictate your future. Your special someone paid attention without interjecting. Then came the most important question. How come you never told me? I didn't want an old chapter to dictate how you perceive me before you had a chance to get to know me, so your expression softened. Suddenly, the phrase, "who you really are," had a whole different connotation. However, your beloved someone still required one thing before fully embracing either version. They requested to view the mails from that time frame. They had been presented with two very distinct stories, not because they wished to look into you. After a moment of hesitation, you displayed what you still had. The initial messages were unremarkable. Then the communication that turned everything around was discovered by your loved someone. After everything we planned, you're really choosing this, the man wrote. I'm choosing the life that feels honest to me. Your reply was simple. You'll regret walking away from what we built. Your answer contained no cruelty, no secret confession, no hidden identity. You wished him well and asked him to respect your decision. The man had witnessed you make a challenging commitment years ago, a commitment to becoming your own person, but there was still one unanswered question. Your special someone slowly lowered the phone. Recall the claim that began all of this, that you could never truly commit. Now the contradiction was impossible to ignore. I shouldn't have contacted you like this, he wrote, and then came a confession neither of you had anticipated. If that chapter had ended so clearly, why had he returned? Now the explanation came before either of you expected it. Your special someone received another message from him, but his tone had changed. The certainty was gone. He acknowledged that when he described you, he wasn't describing the person standing in the present, but rather the person he remembered through the disappointment of losing his place in your future. He had recently learned that you were genuinely happy moving forward and creating meaningful connections without looking back. Hearing that had reopened feelings he thought he had already resolved. After staring at those words for a long time, your special someone turned to face you. The emotional burden that had previously overwhelmed them started to lift. Not because all of the questions magically vanished, but rather because the conversation was finally grounded in context rather than presumptions. However, before the phone could be put away, another message came in. This one wasn't about that night. Instead, it was an apology followed by a revelation about something you had done in secret years later, something even the man from your past had only recently learned about. And when your special someone read it, their whole perception of why you left was altered once more. What emerged next was never intended to be used as proof in any dispute. The man from your past had undergone a challenging transition of his own years after you had moved on from that old chapter, and you had somehow learned about it through a former acquaintance. You might have disregarded it. You never contacted him, you never expected gratitude, you never used the gesture as a reason to return to his life, and your special someone read the message twice, nearly unable to reconcile it with the portrait they had been given hours earlier. Instead, you quietly helped connect him with an opportunity that could move his life forward, asking the mutual friend not to mention your name. No one would have blamed you. The man wrote, "Then I found out they helped me when they had absolutely nothing to gain from it. I spent years thinking they walked away because they stopped caring about everyone connected to that life." The man ultimately acknowledged that he had only lately learned the truth. Suddenly, the most significant revelation wasn't some dramatic label linked to who you were when your special someone turned to face you. It was realizing that there was a part of you in your past that someone had long misinterpreted. You could shut a door without harboring animosity for the person behind it. The discussion then took an even more surprising turn. The man apologized directly to your special someone for claiming that his recollections were indisputable. Neither he nor you were able to put an end to the arguments from the past. That was important. For the truth to make sense, no one had to take on the role of villain. Your choice had felt like a rejection to him. You had seen it as essential development. Both memories might exist, but they couldn't define anything on their own. At last, your particular someone realized why the initial messages had affected them so profoundly. They had been worried that learning about your past would somehow make the person they knew today disappear. Rather, the history demonstrated the complexity of change. The person seated next to them wasn't concealing a startling identity. You were a person who had made tough decisions, learned lessons in silence, and refused to make a past disagreement your lifelong narrative. You are welcome to share in the comments what you believe to be the most important lesson if you have continued on this path. If you like emotionally complex stories like this, please subscribe and forward the story to someone who might find it interesting. Because your special someone asked you a question that completely diverted attention from the man just as it appeared that the tension had been addressed. Are there any other things you've been reluctant to share with me? You didn't respond right away. Just long enough for your loved someone to notice a shift in your countenance. There was stillness. Something more vulnerable, not guilt or dread. The expression of someone determining if someone else is prepared to see a room inside of them that has been locked for years. There is one thing, but it isn't what he thinks, you finally say as you approach the window and watch the city lights flicker across the glass. Your special someone was waiting. You clarified that you had made a personal vow to yourself after leaving that previous life behind. You wouldn't ask someone to save you from your past or compete with it if you ever found someone who really mattered. Together, you would create something new. You didn't talk about the man much because of this. You refused to utilize an old relationship as the focal point of a new one, not because you were shielding a covert relationship. The eyes of your special someone softened, but you weren't done. You had kept that chapter quiet for another reason. And he had nothing to do with this reason. You had discovered something about yourself somewhere during those years that permanently altered your definition of commitment, love, and devotion. You grabbed your phone, opened a long-stored item, and passed it to the person across the room. The ultimate truth of this whole story had never belonged to the man from your past at all, your particular someone thought as they peered down at the screen. There were only a few sentences on the screen, but your particular someone knew right away why you had saved them. It was a letter you had written to yourself years before on the same evening you finally came to the conclusion that the expectations of others could no longer dictate your future. It contained no names, accusations, or attempts to hold someone accountable for your feelings. Rather, the phrases express the person you aspire to be. Someone who could care passionately without living for approval, love without losing their identity, and end an unhappy chapter without carrying grudges into the next. After reading slowly, your particular someone will go back to one statement toward the bottom. I want to be myself when I find something genuine. All the puzzling details of the evening suddenly made sense. The man from your past had thought that your departure demonstrated your lack of devotion. This private note, however, implied nearly the opposite. You had left because you preferred that any future commitments be made voluntarily rather than under duress. Your beloved someone's demeanor had drastically changed as they looked up from the phone. You never told me this, then? They inquired. You gave them a nod, but then you added something unexpected. Not everything. The next discovery was more subdued than any dramatic one could have been. You described how, in a way you never expected, meeting your special someone had made you face that old commitment. Saying you desired openness, honesty, and a partnership unaffected by the past had been simple for years. Then a significant person came into your life. And all of a sudden, vulnerability was necessary for honesty. You were concerned that if you told them the whole story too soon, they might evaluate you based on someone else's recollections. However, delaying led to a different issue. When someone else fills in the blanks first, silence can occasionally appear to be secrecy. Your special someone was aware of that difference, but they didn't just assure you that everything was all right. The room fell silent once more when they posed the question. Would you have finally told me if he hadn't gotten in touch with me? It took you some time to respond. Yes, although most likely later than I ought to have. That response was important because it wasn't flawless. It was plausible. You didn't want to be perceived as someone who has always done things well. You were admitting that shielding a fresh relationship from the past had gradually turned into avoiding an appropriate discussion. Strangely, confessing that error increased rather than decreased your particular someone's trust. Then your beloved someone did something you weren't expecting. I don't need you to have a perfect past. I need to know that when something matters, we can talk about it before somebody else tells the story for us, they added, placing your phone gently on the table. You didn't move at all. The precise location that your cautious quiet had been shielding was reached by those words. The question of whether the man from your past was right or wrong was no longer the focus of the evening that had started with uncertainty. It was now up to you both to decide what to do next. An old recollection didn't want to compete with your special someone.